How did you score it? Biggest takeaway from the fight.
Look, I'm never afraid to give a differing opinion. I heard the full opinions of everybody before I watched this. I watched this morning. I was working at the Showtime cover on Saturday that we talked about. I watched it this morning, but to my credit, after hearing Dom Cruz and you chastise my lack of video watching, I watched the key swing rounds up to 3 times each, took notes. I understand that when you're watching at home in the moment and then you tweet out, or even if you're a Judge Cage side, you don't get to rewatch. You don't get to chart all these stats. You don't get to do that. But after really taking into account the situation, I think the real debate coming out of this fight is something we're going to talk about a little bit in a few minutes in terms of who's the pound for pound king. After this, I don't think there's a debate, in my opinion, as to who won this fight. It was actually somewhat clean and clear to me. I scored it 4-1 for Islam Makhachev. Upon rewatching, I could certainly be talked into the idea of 3-2. And boy, do I, like, if you ask me who won this fight, something Max Kellerman used to say in his HBO days, he'd say, who won the story of the fight? Meaning, not the decision. Who won the story of this fight? This was Alex Volkanovski's night. He won the story of this fight. You said that you and I weren't surprised. I know you weren't. Because along with CBS Sports' Brandon Wise, in terms of people in my ear, you've been day one on the idea that Volkanovski is great. Luke, he is all-time freaking great. He won the story of this fight, in my opinion, by just fighting at a level of confidence, toughness, skill, adaptability, physicality in the takedown defense, a motor that is just award-winning. And then, oh, by the way, he finished the fight beating up the bigger man. So he won the story of this night. He won all of those good feelings, and we'll get to the pound-for-pound debate in a second. But as to who won this fight, I saw a lot of people villainizing that third scorecard that was 4-1. Luke, I think that's actually a better score than the idea of could Volkanovski have won this fight 3-2. Anybody that had that score, I'm not against you. I'm just saying that I've rewatched this. I actually called up the rules of the judging. I mean, I went ham on this, Luke, and I think at the end of the day, you kind of said it subtly there. As much as Volkanovski stole the night, Islam Makhachev's striking and his ability to fight largely on even terms with a guy in Volkanovski who might literally be, along with like Adesanya and maybe Anderson Silva, like the greatest strikers this sport has ever produced. He fought at a pretty even level, Islam Makhachev. And that, to me, Luke, when I look at who actually won some of these close potential swing rounds, I can't go in the other direction of Volkanovski. I gave him round 5 like everyone else. I understand that round 3 has largely become a swing-ish round in which I charted it out and went back. And I know that in the moment, not everybody has that chance. But unless you're counting that knockdown in round 3 by Volkanovski, which I feel was more of a slip/trip in which Volkanovski popped back up, I just don't see where you can give Volkanovski that round. He did not outstrike him in terms of overall, although there was a stat on the screen at a key time, Luke, that said Volkanovski had an advantage of 11 strikes to 10 in significant strikes. Sometimes I feel like we have to re-examine exactly what is a significant strike. What is the process of doing this, whether we're talking about boxing or MMA. And that's not a shot at like CompuBox, who are the, in boxing, the industry leaders in doing this. Just the idea that stuff's happening so fast. How can you gauge? Because there's a sequence in round 3, Luke, where Volkanovski has Makhachev up against the clinch, against the cage, and he's landing these sort of, quick, short punches that are sort of just looking to embellish his role in that round. Do you rate 3 or 4 quick punches on the same level as a left cross from Makhachev that was big in that one that kind of wobbled him, or the fact that Makhachev cut Volkanovski in round 3? To me, that's the closest one where you're heavily debating, and I still, on first and third watch of that, gave it to Makhachev. So unless there's an argument for a 10-8 round, which I don't think there is in round 5, this was a hell of a performance from Volkanovski. Again, the fresher fighter late, had the biggest moments late, but we don't score fights that way. We scored for better or worse under the 10-9 must boxing system. And under that system, even if you're trying to make cases in round 4 that Makhachev wasn't active enough after taking Volkanovski's back, you're right. But read the letter of the law with the rules, chart out all the striking in there. At the end of the day, 3-2 or 4-1, this was Islam Makhachev's night.
Boy, there's a lot to unpack there. Curiously, round 4 with the back taking is one thing I didn't say on the post-fight show that I want to say now. I saw a lot of folks being like, well, Volkanovski outstruck Islam even though he had his back taken. And you can just park that shit somewhere else, please.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
What a total nonsense argument. Did he numerically land more than Islam landed more? I think by 2 he did. Those are nothing strikes. They don't in any way affect the fight. I mean, that's just a nonsense, fucking stupid argument. Here's what I will agree halfway. Islam did stall on the back a little bit. He did. And it's actually a little bit of a wrinkle in the rules that they haven't quite ironed out yet, BC. What I mean by that is, like, did Islam stall on the back with the body triangle? Yes. Should that count against him? No. And the reason why is because it's the referee's job to stop stalling. That is the person who is basically in charge of mandating when stalling is happening to intervene, and he didn't. And he didn't because having the back with a body triangle and a skilled operator like Islam Makhachev on your back, that is the equivalent in chess of check. It's not checkmate, but it's definitely check. And so all I'm pointing out is, if you're upset that he didn't do a lot with the position, what I want to say is getting it and holding it is, and as long as he did 3.5 minutes, certainly long enough to win the round. And if you're upset that he stalled, fine, but we need to empower referees to change that. It's not Islam's job to just get up off of him.
Yeah, here's what I'll say to that. Even if you gave round 4 to Volkanovski because of the point Luke just mentioned, which I'm on Luke's side of the line in terms of interpreting that, to me, Volkanovski still doesn't win the fight. But if that fight was a swing for you, I mean, it does come down to the old, like, who would you rather be in that instance? Do I want to be the guy with the body triangle, having the back of the other opponent, having a history of patience, of submission ability, and essentially he's just waiting. Makhachev's just waiting for Volkanovski to overcommit on his, trying to land these strikes over his head to show the referee, look, rightfully so, I'm the instigator in this, even though I'm in a negative position. Luke, Makhachev is waiting there to try to wait for that one mistake to end the fight. I think that, even if you're saying that that's a push at the end of the day, that Volkanovski's punches over his shoulder could somehow equal the control, and I get what you're saying, it is up to the referee at some point to say nothing's happening here, stand up. I still say over the course of that 4th round that I slightly liked what Makhachev did better, and he scored a takedown, and he instantly went to back and established the threat of the choke. At some time, you have to look at the letter of the law, and I always shout out Dave the Inquisitive at Dave Tron on Twitter for finally opening me up to this with certain things. But Luke, after damage, which is always going to be the first thing, striking damage, right? And in Makhachev's bruises on his face and stuff didn't happen until round 5. You have to look at the impact and what that did in terms of changing someone's game plan, frustrating someone, tiring somebody out. I'm not saying Makhachev's attempts at tiring out Volkanovski worked. It didn't. But he's applying all these things, and unless Volkanovski outstruck him in a manner, to me, that's eye-opening, I can't give him that round. That's me personally interpreting the rules. You can have it your way. But Luke, would you agree with this, that 4-1 Makhachev might actually be a better scorecard than 3-2 Volkanovski? I want to get your opinion directly on that point.
So I scored it rounds 1 and 3 and 4 for Islam. Rounds 1, 3, and 4. I gave 2 and 5 to Volkanovski. 5's the obvious one. No big deal. 4.
How do you give 2 to him? I'm very curious about this because that was another round I rewatched a few times.
So here's where I disagree with some folks. People are saying 3 is the swing round. I agree that 3 is a swing round. I think there's a case for Volkanovski in round 2 as well. To me, round 1, pretty much Islam's. Round 4, pretty much Islam's. Round 5, definitely Volkanovski's. That was the strongest round anyone had in either direction, really.
No doubt.
It's 2 and 3 to me is where it all kind of comes down to and how you get it. And this is the point. I saw people beating up one of the judges who had a 49-46, which is the same as your scorecard. That's not how I saw it. I saw it 3-2 Makhachev, but I think a 3-2 Volkanovski is totally fine because you're already spotting him round 5, so he just needs 2 more. If you saw 2 and 3 as that way, that there's the math. And I don't think a 2 or rounds 2 or 3 for Volkanovski is in any way a bad card. It's just it was hard to discern in real time. You're making a real-time call. I thought Makhachev did a little bit better in round 3. I thought Volk did a little bit better in round 2 qualitatively, and that's where I came down on it.
The difference in round 2, I anticipated this could be an argument that somebody would make, whether you or someone else. The knockdown in round 2 that Volkanovski had, and correct me if I'm getting my sequences wrong, wasn't that more of he did land a punch, but Makhachev almost forcefully took a knee to shoot the takedown. So I'm not doubting that the punch didn't land. It was fine. But then Makhachev sort of shoots in to try to secure a takedown and then rallies back in that round to drop Volkanovski. So to me, that was He dropped him to a knee with a clean shot. That's sort of the moment, the indicator for me that Makhachev had edged him in terms of we're comparing strike to strike in that.
Right, and also had almost, I think, a minute. I'm looking at the stats here. He had nearly a minute of control time, which again by itself doesn't score, but it gives you an indication of, I think, the back control I think he had.
So how are you scoring second for Alex is really my key question here.
I have to go back and look at my notes.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look and see what he did. But in any case, what I would say to you is rounds 2 and 3, I think are, again, these are numeric totals, not qualitative totals. But in rounds 2, numerically, they were the same in significant strikes, 19 apiece. And in round 3, ever so slightly into Makhachev's favor, 16-14. Plus, he had a takedown in each of those rounds. And then he had about a minute and a half of...
And he cut the forehead of Volkanovski.
So my point being is, like, I think Makhachev is the rightful winner. And the one I want to make about your 49-46 scorecard, the reason why I don't think it's not how I saw it, but the reason why I feel like that's okay is because, again, if we're saying 1, 4, and 5 are not in dispute, right? When we're talking about 2 and 3, if we're saying it's close, then what you're saying is, by definition, you can make a case for either guy. And if you can make a case for either guy, that means there's a series of permutations that are acceptable. One of which is rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4 going to Makhachev, rounds 5 going to Volkanovski, under the idea that, again, what are all the permutations? You could have it the 2 and 3, not Volkanovski, 2 then 3, not at all for 3 and 2, and then just for 3. You can have all those different permutations while leaving 1, 4, and 5 the same. My point being is, getting a 49-46 doesn't mean that the judge didn't think that Volkanovski was really, really close at times, just that in that individual unit he happened to side with Makhachev.
That's the scoring system. It's a scoring system, and then you have to mix it with the actual letter of the law and the rules, and that's the strike zone we're in. This ain't pride. We can have a pride debate all you want. This isn't pride.